Well, welcome back to Tim Talk. This is a second, I guess, in a series. I started Tim Talks a little while ago just to introduce you to some people, some folks out there, to some people who you should know about. And the last time we had Jennifer Fraser, and Jennifer is also on our board of management, and she's a change management consultant, professional. So this is Skip Eaman, and Skip Eaman is our treasurer at St. Paul's, very active member. So thought you should know this guy. He's a good guy, and what I've asked him to do is just say a little bit about who he is, where he comes from, what he's done till now, and it's quite a resume. So this is Skip Eaman.
Thank you, Tim. That's an open-ended introduction, so I guess I can. But before I say anything about me, I just want to commend you on these Tim Talks and the what I'll call the online worship that you are leading out of St. Paul's. It's made a real difference to everyone, and I should say it has been a real success in everybody's eyes. The parishioners, people outside of our own parish, and it's an inspiration. So thank you for that.
Oh.
So back to me. So first of all, I can't give you the whole history because I'm actually 72 years old. And for me to get on your Tim Talks and start talking the 72 years of history, the people will all be asleep soon. So I actually grew up in Audubon Heights. Audubon Heights, for those who wouldn't be aware, is about 20 miles from Montreal. And it was, I would say, one of the first residential sort of suburbs of Montreal way back in the day. And it was on the CNR rail line. And so many people back in the days of my parents worked for the CNR that they all got free passes. So it made the outlying areas much more accessible to people like my parents. So that's how they ended up in Audubon, and I subsequently, with my sister Heather, who's a little older than I am, that's where we grew up. So that is a South Shore community, which still exists today for sure on the Richelieu River. Beautiful place to grow up as a kid. My dad worked in the city, so he commuted on a daily basis. At first in the train, as I mentioned earlier, and then in later years by car, which at the time was a pretty big deal, driving that 20 miles to commute to work. So I went to high school there. I ended up going to university for my first couple of years studying engineering at Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. I was studying engineering at a strongly liberal arts school, which didn't have a engineering degree. It only had an engineering certificate. So I was forced after a couple of years to find a place that had an engineering degree qualification. So that ended up being Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, where I ended up transferring from Mount Allison to Queen's. I, just as many kids do, I used to play a little country football out in Audubon. We had an 8-man football team, and I guess I had a little bit of an aptitude for it. So when I went to Mount Allison, the coach there at the time kind of interested me in participating in their practices, which I did, and then subsequently going to Queen's. Somehow they had an interest in my talents, and my first year at Queen's was 1968 as a transfer student from Mount A, and we won the Vanier Cup. So wow. we had some pretty good success right out of the chute, and as many people may know, but success sort of breeds interest. It's much easier to continue to participate when things are going well. which is not necessarily a good a character attribute, but at least I think it is true. It's easier. So I continued to play football at Queens, ended up graduating, and subsequently got drafted by the Saskatchewan Roughriders to go play in the CFL. Before I ended up, so this is my last year at Queens, before I ended up going to actually play football in Regina, the Ottawa Roughriders had a real interest in me and traded for me to go to Ottawa. So I right out of after graduating, went to training camp in Ottawa, and subsequently played football there for a few years before I got traded to the Montreal Alouettes. We ended up winning the Grey Cup in 1974, and through all of this, and I say all of this, during my football days, I had as much an interest in business as I did in football. Football was there, and I had I guess you'd say I had the abilities, and I had people who were interested in my talent. So it was easy for me just to continue on in my football world. But my real interest was to get into business. My father had a business called Eaman Rigs, which was a insulation contracting business in Montreal, as well as an office in Toronto. So as I, I'm getting a little older now, and I decided that I wanted to be in the business. So off season, I absolutely worked in call it my dad's business. And subsequently, when we had road trips, so Montreal playing against the Toronto Argonauts, playing against the Hamilton Tiger Cats, I used to practice my selling skills on the side and make sure we got customers that were, in fact, potential customers of Eaman Rigs in those geographic areas to come to the game and come to the dressing room. And I learned early on that had a great impact on my ability to sell.
No doubt.
So, yeah. So after 5 years, I decided to hang up my football and, in fact, get directly involved in the business on a, call it, full-time basis, and found it to be very stimulating and very much enjoyed it. There are many stops and starts and deviations in the business world, but my real foundation was in insulation. So as an insulation contractor in my dad's business, and then I subsequently took over my dad's business, and then opportunities presented themselves to be in other parts of the business. Specifically and significantly, ended up purchasing the assets of Canadian Johns Manville, which was a large insulation manufacturer, well, a U.S. manufacturer who had a branch and operations in Canada. So they ended up selling that business to myself and my partner, and we operated that business successfully for almost 30 years, and ended up selling that business to a German interest back about 10 years ago. So I'm getting closer to present day. During that period, I should say, because it forms part of my day-to-day routine now, we also vertically integrated that manufacturing business, that fiberglass insulation manufacturing business, to distribution. So we had our own distribution network, separately operated, separate profit centers in Western Canada. We were in Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver. We were in Toronto and Hamilton, Ottawa, Montreal, Halifax, St. John, and St. John, Newfoundland. And that is a building material, but primarily insulation distributor. And the customers are mainly contractors. So we distribute insulation materials and products to the contractors for the building, as building trades. So wow. That's kind of, and I still sold the manufacturing business, and today continue to own and participate in the management of the distribution business. It's called
Wow.
Multi-Glass Insulation, and the head office of that is in Toronto. So just to give to sort of, well, maybe I'll give you a chance to say something. Sorry,
Wow, that's
I'm going on a little bit here, but
yeah, no, that's amazing. That's so quite a successful, thriving business across North America.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Uh, we've had many well, I say North America, it's mainly Canada, but we certainly do operate in the United States. We have some employees in the United States, and we ship those products from our fabricating facility in Toronto. Um, yeah, that I think that's pretty much it. I ended up in Knowlton. My wife and I, Debbie and I, um, and we have two children, two daughters, Sarah and Amanda. Um, but Deb and I, made Knowlton our full-time residence back about 15 years ago. And prior to that, it was more of a country residence weekend kind of thing that we were doing. And we started looking for a church, and we found our affiliation at St. Paul's Anglican Church in Knowlton, and both my wife and I continue to attend the services and enjoy very much the leadership that you provide.
Well,
Um, I guess my spiritual, and I say that carefully, but my interest in religion started as a young boy. I think with people my age, probably the usual parents dropping you off at Sunday school, and you have other friends there, and the Sunday school provides this little social atmosphere, as well as you get to learn a little bit about the Bible and Jesus working and so on. So it's just continued from there. I would say I'm a moderate as it comes to professing my spirituality, but I very much am a believer, and enjoy it, and for my own peace of mind. So
yeah.
it's yeah, that's kind of that.
I know you've mentioned tradition is important to you, and tradition at church, and tradition in the game of golf, which you are an excellent golfer as well.
Well, I appreciate that. I my dad my golf sort of goes back to the days with my dad. As a kid, as many kids are, I was very interested in athletics of all sorts, playing hockey, playing football, playing everything. And where I grew up in Otterburn, we had a racing canoe club, the Otterburn Boating Club, it was called, and we used to race against every weekend during the summer. We'd race against other clubs, and it took a lot of time. You had to practice every day, and the meets were very, very intense and so I found that very interesting. But my dad, who was not much of a golfer, but he was a golfer, really pushed me to play golf. And the reason being, and pretty simply, is that you'll be able to play golf for the rest of your life. You'll meet people, you'll be able to use it in business, pleasure, with your family, with the whole thing. And you know what? If you think about it, it's so true. I mean, the football days ended when I stopped playing football for the Montreal Alouettes. I stopped playing hockey long before that. I would say the only other sport is maybe skiing, but skiing, when you're playing golf, you're playing competitively, even if you're just playing with your friends. Skiing is different. You don't have that attraction to it. So I learned to play golf, and I learned very quickly that the and I'll use the word tradition, but the history of the game, and thereby the tradition of the rules, the the behavior, is so important to the game itself. And the new players today, who look at it as strictly a sport and how far can I hit the ball, completely miss the mark as it relates to what else golf can bring to you, your character,
Hmm.
your life. So the tradition of that, the tradition of church, the tradition of little towns like Knowlton, and
Yeah.
the people who founded it and built it, and we're undergoing in Knowlton right now a little bit of a use the word resurrection, uh, a little bit of a change with the library, with our pond, with the way the town, in fact, even conducts itself. But it appears to me, and which I'm very happy about, the mayor and the council and the people, the elected people, very much are interested in the history and the tradition of Knowlton. So yeah, tradition is a big part of what I think about almost daily, even in my business. The insulation business has a certain tradition and benchmarks that go way back, and I like to maintain those. So
Hmm.
it's yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't mention it, but it's a very big part of I guess my psyche and
Yeah.
my character. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and going back to Queens, you're still really, I mean, talk about tradition. Queens has a huge tradition, and you're still quite affiliated with Queens. And
That's
uh, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think, and I'm sure it's funny, these things bring emotion to me. So you're right. I'm very attached to the Queen's University, and I sit on a board called the Red Banner Society, the RBS. And the RBS is a group of 6 people, including me, who effectively really monitored through the rebuild of our stadium. We got a brand new stadium there, along with almost the rebuild of the team and the coaching staff and so on, because it's my view that the football program, not just for the players, but for the students, is extremely important for the tradition of Queens. Queens has a huge tradition of the Queens Golden Gales and the football team. And I believe the people who go to Queens have bigger and better memories of the days, the fall afternoons in the stands watching the Queens Golden Gales than they do of their days stuck in the library studying for an exam in November. And when I talk to people and younger people, they absolutely agree with me on that. And I know it was certainly the case for me. Although I was playing, I still recognize that people in the stands were having lots of fun, building relationships for the rest of their life. And yeah, so that's how I'm trying to give back. So
Yeah.
I do so with time and financially, and yeah, and it's nice to be part of the tradition.
Yeah. And around Knowlton, I know you're quite involved in the adaptive sports foundation.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the treasurer of Adaptive Sports Foundation, which is a which is an organization founded by Peter Tracy with the intent of providing stimulation and a sense of meaning for people with disabilities. And those disabilities can be as far reaching as mental, but that started mainly as physical disabilities. So we have the ability through the foundation uh, to give people instructions, people who may be a paraplegic, maybe have any type of physical disability, to ski, snow ski,
Mhm.
and in the summertime water ski. And it's got a real far reach now. It's become quite successful. Our main office is here in Knowlton, but we branch out now. Quebec City, our main ski program is in Owl's Head. We use the lake, Lac Brome, for the water ski program, but we do mobile. We have a mobile unit where we can travel basically anywhere to provide these services to people who need it. And if you're ever to watch some of our videos on YouTube or whatever, the delight in the people who are the people receiving the services, is beyond anything you could experience. But as important, the volunteers, of which there are hundreds and hundreds, the pleasure and the what they get out of helping people with these disabilities is also beyond belief. So adaptive sports is not just for what we call the client, it's also for the people who are the volunteers. And it's very, very heartwarming. We're in the middle of a big fundraiser right now. We're halfway through it, and we're being quite successful in our ability to raise the funds to continue to provide the service. Yeah.
Great.
Here we are.
Here we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add, or?
Not really, Tim. I started by saying how much I appreciate your time in the community and working for the Anglican Church or working for St. Paul's. And I guess by repeating that is not, I'm not wasting time. I do appreciate it, and I just want to reiterate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Skip. That's much appreciated in St. Paul's and the town of Knowlton. We all appreciate your the efforts you give, and I know I started out the sort of Tim Talks with just observing just people around. George Cunius was the first fella I thought I want to sit down, I want to have a conversation with this guy, because he's clearly someone who's respected. I just noticed in a room, and certainly you are that fella too. I know you as a friend, and I see the wide range of people who are your friends and who respect you a lot. So you're absolutely, it's great having you on a Tim Talk. So we
much appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Well, no, and I hope that this all records. This is the first time trying to record a Zoom call, so I see it's recording. I hope it's going to record. So keep saying prayers and cross your fingers.
Super. All right.
Thanks, Skip.
Take care.
God bless.